Whichever you wish. We're going to do just a real quick lightning round. A lot of this is because we had to make choices, to hear really briefly what happened in the rooms possibly you weren't in, and know that thanks to the wonders of both the internet and technology, you have the ability to come and watch it tonight. And then Sally, do you want to, I was going to have you do wrap, very tail end, discuss, but just kind of a final, okay, all right. So, we're going to go in the order, and just so you know, Steve agreed that since we just heard his panel that we didn't need to hear a wrap-up because we just heard his panel. So the nationalism, disinformation, and free expression. Do I have somebody here on that topic?
I think it's supposed to be me.
All right. I'll let you just go ahead and take the microphone there.
Hi, Nathan White, Access Now, and once again on stage to talk about other people's intelligent thoughts. The nationalism, free expression, and the age of the internet panel was the first session we had this morning, so thank you all who were able to be up bright and early to attend that. I think the best summary I had was actually what somebody said to me immediately afterward, which was, wow, we're really in the middle of this still, aren't we? In the panel, we started to talk about, we tried to get to what solutions might be out there, but we realized we're still in the middle of this and trying to decide to describe and define what the problem is. We don't even know where the four corners of this debate are, but we did start to talk about solutions and things that we might be able to explore further as we try to address these issues while protecting free speech in the age of the internet.
Well done. And thank you for kicking the day off. That was a fantastic dialogue this morning. Smarter networks.
I'm Dr. Amela El-Kerzezi, and in the Smarter Networks panel, we had the moderator of Jonathan Zook from Innovators Network Foundation, Glenn Dean of Comcast NBC Universal, Tom Bascom, Internet Names for Discovery and Interoperability, Tim Etzel of BAE Systems, Marcina Tillman-Dick, the Global Blockchain Business Council. The key points concerning IVP6 will continue to be adopted because names available under IPv4 have been depleted. This impacts naming and all uses of networks, for example, existing and evolving technology like streaming, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. Another key point, systems like Gigi will speed up the packet delivery by reusing packets wherever possible. And related to that, there will be permanent IDs to content, and there were potentially some privacy concerns around that, but sort of throwaway IP addresses could be used to provide some coverage for people who had privacy concerns. Another point was networks are basically an AI problem. AI will need to help automate network traffic, responsibility to monitor AI on networks that are put out. So, smaller companies now are able to also create AI applications, and they're putting it out on networks, and just like bigger corporations, they'll have a responsibility to kind of monitor their AI. And the final point, blockchain will use networks in new ways. For example, there was an example given of Ukraine, where the entire government has made a commitment to try and use the blockchain for its public responsibilities for actually managing the government. So there'll be something called, private and public blockchains. They'll emerge, and essentially another example that was given concerned property deeds. Some information will continue to be private, like, who actually maybe is the title holder of that or lien holder. But other information, like there was actually a transaction, would be part of the public blockchain. All of this is related to naming. Conventions and simplification is needed in that area. Thanks.
Thanks, Ramella. The healing the internet fragmentation. Don't have anybody to. Okay, great.
Thanks, Shane. So this morning during our panel, we had a really interesting discussion on different ways to heal internet fragmentation. And we understood fragmentation for the purposes of the panel as being categorized into technical, commercial, and governmental instances of fragmentation. So we got to hear from speakers, Marco from RIPE NCC, for example, which is a regional internet registry, about the technical implications that policies that come from above can have on the technical infrastructure. We heard 6 kind of point proposal about different approaches to deal with different instances of governmental regulation from Anupam Chandra from UC Davis. We also had a very interesting discussion about instances where in the local level, for example, Greta Byram, who works with resilient communities, communities that are particularly vulnerable, immigrant communities, to certain kind of, we'll say, surveillance or discrimination about how they want to set up mesh networks that are actually fragmented from the internet. And then that led to a discussion about how do you determine when to fragment and when that's acceptable and when it's not. So overall, it was a very interesting conversation that teed up a later conversation on potential solutions. So when there are instances of fragmentation that we decide that we do want to heal, for example, government shutdowns, what are ways that we can introduce solutions to do that? And then we did hear about the importance of getting local intelligence about when an internet shutdown occurs and for what reason. So that, all in all, it was a very useful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Promoting a more inclusive internet.
Hi, this is Judith Hellestein. So we had also another really good panel on. We had moderator was Dr. Brandy Noneke, and our panelists were Jane Coffin, who's from the Internet Society, but focusing on the project she's doing with community networks and mesh networks. Chris Rezendes, who's the founder of IoT Impact Labs. Maya Wiley, who's Senior VP for Social Justice at the New School and had been one of the creators of the New York City Broadband Plan, and Dr. Vanu Bose, who's the President and CEO of Vanu Incorporated. And we mostly focused on both the rural and the urban environments and looking at sort of what is the problem with access and how do people getting it. Because we looked at it through several different focus questions. So some of the questions are like, in 2015, what would inclusive internet look like? Or what are good internet fragmentation issues? Looking at how can we resolve these internet problems? And Vanu talked about that the problems in rural, both in rural America and in Africa, are not problems of infrastructure or technical issues, but are basically economic. And how do we get the price points down? How do we create a better network system that uses that doesn't need to be hooked up to a grid, that can use solar power? How do we work with the community to get sustainability? Because sustainability is key. How do we get community involvement in it? Looking at some issues of how do we why do we want to get people connected? What is it? Asking the community's questions is what's so important about connectivity? What really do you want the internet to do? And some of these questions, seeing about really what are the consumers looking for, and making sure that we can do something that works with consumers. And it may not be a broadband network. Maybe the consumers just want something smaller network. What do they really need? And looking at that, and then also looking at what spectrum solutions are out there, and maybe we can do some experimental or secondary spectrum to look at and how to fill in these chains where these gaps are. Because if If they're not being served and the government's not being served, there's something maybe you could do. So it's an issue of how to get the economics down. And we can get economics down by very different means, but how do we do that? Because once we can get the economics down, and then we can figure out what the community wants and involve the community in making sure that this is what they want and have them involved in creating the structure, we can get something that will be a lot more sustainable that communities can support and communities can continue. And that's really the focus of trying to get this missing step, because it's not just a connectivity alone, it's a community-driven thing, and how does the community take ownership?
Thanks, Judith. Taking a holistic approach to the Internet of Things. Dan?
Thanks, Shane. We had a very robust discussion. We had representatives of ICANN, NTIA, R Street, the Wilberforce Foundation, and the Consumer Technology Association. We talked about that the Internet of Things is an example of new technologies bring us ways to respond to today's challenges that never existed before and come with new opportunities. That technology itself is not good or bad, it's how we use the technology. We've been doing this, we have a dynamic coalition on the Internet of Things that was set up in Hyderabad at IGF in 2008, and have been working on a global good practice paper with a focus on ethics. So for those of you that are interested, you can find out more at IoT/Dynamic Coalition, IoT/Dynamic/Coalition.org. As I said, our discussion was robust and very wide-ranging. But among the main points is that with the Internet of Things, that the scope and scale actually is new, that it's a distributed, the challenge that we face is a distributed problem, that we will also be looking at distributed solutions. We talked about the importance of capacity building and awareness in terms of driving the multi-stakeholder process. In terms of picking up on the dynamic coalition, the IoT framework, the issue of ethics, we had a long discussion about ethics, and that it's important with the Internet of Things and all technology, but to incorporate that ethics incorporates the way people see and interact with their daily lives. And then obviously from Vince Cerf's challenge this morning, we spent a fair amount of time talking about that the fundamental premise of the IoT is to make life better for people in the developing and the developed world. So thank you.
Thanks. The national network regulation versus the global cloud. Mike.
I'm Mike Nelson with Cloudflare. Our panel was designed to look at where national network regulations are getting in the way of companies that are trying to provide global cloud services, particularly startup companies. We had the most international panel. Laura Donardis from American University kind of provided a framework on how to think about these issues. Fani Higvigi from Brussels talked about the specific case of data retention laws in Europe. Nigel Corey is based here in Washington, but he's originally from Brisbane, Australia, has a great accent. He summarized a recent ITIF report on data localization and the different laws in different countries. And then Masasaki Sakamaki came all the way from Tokyo to talk about internet interconnection, particularly what's going on in Asia. We also had great questions from Susan Chalmers, from Mike Godwin, from Thomas Streintz, and a really good question on how technology is embedded, has embedded values in it. I'm going to summarize our conclusions in about 10 tweets real quickly. Laura had a very good one that actually got retweeted. The cloud is not the internet, but regulating the internet does impact the cloud. Data localization is not compatible with good engineering design. Third tweet, in many cases, encryption does a much better job of accomplishing what data localization requirements are intended to accomplish. The one universal tweet, which may apply to most of the panels, was it's complicated. And we had a particularly good case of that from Ukraine and in Fani's discussion of EU data retention laws. But we concluded that the ITU was even more complicated than the EU. The ITIF report found that many of the data localization requirements come from very old legacy rules, 20 and 30 years old. A lot of different motivations for those rules, ranging from Russians worried about information war to some European countries playing protectionist games. And then we asked for concluding tweets, and one that I particularly liked was, don't ask what regulation is needed, ask what the minimal regulation is needed. That's clearly not happening in some cases. We had a lot of discussion about what's going on in Korea with internet interconnection rules. We also concluded that multi-stakeholder cooperation is the key to dealing with the complexity of these issues. Fani summarized another key point, which is that good public policy is built on a foundation of human rights, and that her hope was that the courts in Europe will be able to sort out some of the very conflicting messages being sent by different parts of the same government, where data protection commissioners are saying, protect the data, and law enforcement is saying, give me all the data you got forever. And then the last point, just to build on what was said about IoT, is that the Internet of Things will make everything even more complicated.
Thanks, Mike. Do I have somebody from the privacy regulation, U.S. bottom-up versus top-down approach?
Hi, I'm Ramela El-Karzezi again. And the moderator for this particular panel was Shuli Halleck, Executive Director of ISOC New York Chapter. Panelists included Naomi Lefkowitz of NIST, Michelle Demoy of CDT, Cara Sutton of United States Chamber of Commerce, Caroline Greer of Cloudflare, Craig Spetzel, Online Trust Alliance. There were 6 key points. The first point, there's really a need to think about privacy during the development phase. Getting consent on the back end is not enough. A second key point, encryption is security, which is not the same thing as privacy. And so that's something to think about, again, during development. Third point, different data has different risks associated to it. Fourth point, the GDPR will provide some level of certainty, but there are real challenges around data transfer from it. And conversely, Congress in the United States rolling back FCC regulations has introduced some level of uncertainty. Fifth key takeaway, diversity is needed in your subject matter experts as it relates to accurately determining your risks associated with privacy during the development phase. So think about diversity and inclusion as it relates to privacy during development. And the sixth and final point is pay for privacy would potentially lead to disenfranchisement for the poor. But there is still a real need to think about market-based solutions for privacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Elon University, just give us a real quick, do you want to do it here?
So you may have seen us around today. I'm Alex Hager.
I'm Maya Eklund. How's everyone doing? You made it.
We are here with 17 other students and 3 faculty from Elon University documenting this year's IGF USA. We've covered the event via text, photos, and videos, and you can find all of our coverage for every event throughout the day at imaginingtheinternet.org. This is our 6th year covering IGF USA, and in that time, more than 100 student journalists have attended this conference with the intention of reporting on it. Among the alumni from our work at IGF USA, people are now working at the Houston Chronicle and some other major national newspapers, as well as ABC, MSNBC, NBC, CBS Interactive, NPR, and some other major news outlets around the country. Youth engagement has been part of IGF USA since its initial convening in 2009 when Marilyn Cade invited Professor Jana Anderson of Elon University, director of the Imagining in the Internet Center, to involve her students. Anderson had been training student journalism teams and taking them to do documentary interviews at the Global IGF since its start in Athens in 2006, so it made sense to involve Elon.
Yeah, so since 2009, Elon University has nearly annually fielded teams of 15 to 20 journalism students who participate in IGF USA by working to document every aspect of every session. So you probably saw us in every room if you guys were there. And we have real-time professional level reporting that is posted online within hours of each event. So we also learn about issues, meeting, and we report on experts attending IGF USA, and we all usually intend in later entering the journalism field. This youth involvement carries a great deal of follow-through impact while creating useful archive print, photographic, and video documents of the events, as well as live media social buzz. So thanks for the follows and retweets, everyone on Twitter. In addition to attending and documenting IGF USA sessions, Elon University has also regularly participated as youth panelists in IGF USA events. Anderson and Elon University professor Colin Donahue, who's in the back, have worked with other university leaders, including Derek Cogburn from American University, Dimitri Epstein from University of Illinois, Chicago, and Pablo Molina, formerly of Georgetown University, to organize and facilitate youth sessions. So that's a lot, but I can tell you personally that this was an amazing experience for all of us. We traveled, a lot of us are in the middle of internships right now, so it's really cool that we kind of get a front row seat to how to really do some real-time journalism and reporting.
And we've learned a lot from all of you, and I know that the students who come and attend this have a vast new knowledge about the internet and the role that people and journalists can all play in it. So we'd like to thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys.
I also want to give a quick shout out to Dustin and Ethan for all the amazing work they did to keep us all organized. Marilyn Cade has some comments from the IGF International, and Sally, do I still have Sally? So she's moving. Do you want to join us up on stage? Yeah, right, yeah. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Thank you. My name is Marilyn Cade, but I'm going to be channeling Changatai Masanga, who leads the IGF Secretariat. That's a 4-person team located in Geneva who has the responsibility of supporting the IGF multi-stakeholder advisory group that advises the United Nations Secretary General on the planning of the IGF. I'm going to just point out that for those of you who know Changatai, it's easy to tell the difference. He's from Zimbabwe and is 6'6". I'm not from Zimbabwe, and I'm at least a foot shorter. But I'm going to do my best to do credit for the comments he sent us. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to again join the IGF USA, even remotely. I recall with appreciation I have been privileged to participate in person at the 2011 IGF USA annual meeting, but also many times by using online participation tools. Since 2009, the IGF itself has had excellent cooperation with IGF USA through your very focused commitment and support for the national and regional IGF activities. For this, I would especially like to thank the community there today, and more broadly that supports the IGF USA, many of whom are former or current members of the IGF's multi-stakeholder advisory group, are contributors to the IGF intersessional work, such as Connecting the Next Billions, are organizers and panelists of many of the sessions at the IGF's annual meeting. Many of your community members show special dedication to having the IGF USA present also among collaborative work of the NRIs from across the world, and this is very much appreciated by the IGF. In particular, I'd like to thank the IGF USA Steering Committee and your co-chairs, Shane Toos and David Bjorst, for running an exemplary bottom-up, multi-stakeholder, open, transparent, and inclusive planning process, and also for your collaboration, again, with the IGF overall. I'd like to recognize that you are making a fantastic commitment in your meeting today, and I'm very sorry I can't be with you in person because of your comprehensive and important agenda that you are addressing. Issues like Internet of Things, free speech, privacy, inclusiveness, and fragmentation of the Internet are among the most pertinent issues to the Internet governance agenda, locally and globally. National perspectives are especially important in these times when nations are fully determined to work hard to fulfill the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development through achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Many of the SDGs are directly dependent on Internet technologies. It is because of this that we need to strive toward having good Internet policies. The IGF initiatives that are organized nationally, sub-regionally, and regionally reflect into the IGF and provide unique platforms for all stakeholders, governments, civil society, private sector, the technical community, academia, to join their expertise and offer good Internet governance-related recommendations for achieving a more prosperous future for all. I am pleased that this year, as ever, the IGF USA meeting is producing valuable insights and outcomes that will enrich the substance of the IGF's annual meeting. We are cordially inviting the IGF respective communities to join the 12th IGF annual meeting hosted by the Government of Switzerland in Geneva from the 18th to the 21st of December under the overarching theme, Shape Your Digital Future. With this, I sincerely thank you for inviting me, and I wish you, and I congratulate you on your very productive meeting.
Thank you, Marilyn. And